Hello and welcome to Nurture and Nutrition. It's a beautifully hot sunny day today here in France where I live, which is a nice change from the weather we've been having up until now. I would like to talk today about again, preconceived ideas about how we should be eating and what we should be eating. And this one is specifically to do with what we're told that we should be putting in our plates. Again, to come back to a video that I saw recently on YouTube, the lovely young woman was saying that you should have your protein in the plate and your vegetable, and you should have your starch. Okay. We're traditionally told that these three elements should be part of our diet. Every meal should have protein, animal protein or some kind of protein, vegetables, so green vegetables, and starch. And actually for me it's a bit of a conundrum because I don't know where this came from. Until the 1700s, and I'm quoting Dr. Lustig in this one, until the 1700s, traditionally nobody actually ate starch with any meal. This was something that was implemented during a time of famine. People would eat starch because that was what was available, because the other foods had not grown. Perhaps there was a lack of meat, lack of vegetables, and so people would actually replace what they would normally have on their plate with starch, basically so that they could carry on eating. But this is, in a sense, is kind of the government recommendation or the medical body's recommendation of how we should eat. Now, if you have a perfectly working pancreas and have never had any history of diabetes, heart disease, etc. in your family, then eating in that manner can actually work for you. The problem being, if you don't come from that kind of background, if you have a pancreatic sensitivity like I do, eating in that manner is actually not going to help you lose weight and can actually be detrimental in the sense that you will actually put on weight. The carbohydrate, the starch, is treated in the body in the same manner as sugar. That's to say that it's converted into glucose, and the pancreas is going to produce insulin to take care of this glucose ingestion. Now, the thing is, if your pancreas isn't working properly and you're producing already too much insulin, what's going to happen is that you're going to produce too much. You're going to stock all of the glucose as fat cells through the process of lipogenesis that is produced by the pancreas and by the secretion of insulin. So the problem is that you're actually going to gain weight through following these government recommendations or these medical recommendations. And again, what follows, or what I've seen amongst people, what follows that is that they then think, oh well, I'm eating too much, and so they reduce the quantities of what they're eating, and we get to the famine phenomenon where your body goes into alert and starts stocking everything that you eat in order to face the famine that is apparent to your body, to your body's metabolism. Now, from the things that I've actually learned and the things that I've read, from what I can gather, unless you happen to be an Olympic athlete, you don't actually need to eat starch or include starch in your diet. I very occasionally will have some kind of starch, but I would actually say it's more on special occasions. I'll have roast potatoes for if it's somebody's birthday, or I'll have bread if I go to a restaurant, for example. It reminds me of a friend of mine, one of my best friends. His father is a top chef. He's Meilleur Ouvrier de France. And in a conversation with him, with this friend's father one evening, he said the following. He said, when you go to a restaurant, you should eat something that you don't normally or don't habitually eat when you're at home. So when I go to a restaurant, I'll have chips and potatoes and rice and pasta because I don't normally eat those foods. To come back to the Olympic athlete question, it is true that exercise, now I already spoke in a previous video about what exercise is really good for. There is also an advantage of exercise in that it helps to control what's going on with the metabolism. It helps to slow down the insulin production, for example. So if you're an Olympic athlete, that eating some starch can be not detrimental to what you're doing, okay? And obviously the starch can be transformed into energy with the lipogenesis, then transformed into glycogen that is then used by the body for energy. So eating starch, if you're an Olympic athlete, can be okay, but we're not. If you're just an ordinary person like I am, you're not an Olympic athlete. A lot of people have sedentary lives. When you're sedentary, eating starch really doesn't actually make much sense. It has become normal practice. It's like a staple in the diet to have starch as part of the meal. I know when I was growing up, we had potatoes every single day. What I know about potatoes now is that they have a GI of, depending on how you cook them, between 85 and 95. If you know that sugar has a GI, a glycemic index, that's the level of glucose in your blood once you've eaten something, is the glycemic index. When you know that sugar has a glycemic index of 100, if you think of a baked potato that has a glycemic index, a GI of 95, well, basically your potato is pure sugar. That is what you're eating. And everybody knows, this isn't rocket science, everybody knows that sugar is fattening. Not everybody knows why it's fattening, but we know that it is, okay? And again, the sugar is treated by the insulin. It increases the glucose levels in your blood, and the insulin is responsible for lipogenesis, which is to say that the glucose is transformed, in fact, into fat cells that will be stocked by your body. So this myth about we have to have such and such on our plates, and again, I'm going to talk, in a previous video I mentioned the naturally drawn to foods. What foods are you naturally drawn to? Now, if your organism has been a bit messed up with a lot of, let's say, processed foods, packaged foods, maybe the fast foods, I'm not attacking any restaurants in particular, and perhaps just the general way of eating, then the naturally drawn to element is going to be kind of messed up as well, because your body is sending out signals because it's used to eating in a certain manner. With the knowledge that I had gained through the fact that my mother was diabetic, type 1, she had type 1 diabetes, through the knowledge that I gained from that, I was able actually, and other things that I've read, scientific studies, etc., I was actually able to kind of realize the effect of what I was having, the effect of what I was eating was having on my body. And so I basically stopped eating starch. And again, I do have some occasionally, but I am drawn to, for example, today at lunchtime, I really wanted tomatoes. I wanted tomatoes with basil and garlic, So I made myself a basil and garlic vinaigrette, and I added in, I suddenly thought, I'd like something with nut oil. So I added in some nut oil to the vinaigrette with some olive oil, a tiny bit of balsamic vinegar. You need to watch out for the balsamic vinegar. It does have a high GI, okay, it's got sugar in it. But it does taste nice. So I put in just a tiny little bit of balsamic vinegar. And I had the tomatoes, and I wanted broccoli. So I had the broccoli and the tomatoes, and I had the vinaigrette, and I had a French preparation, I would say. I don't know if you know what black pudding is. In France it's called boudin noir. It's full of iron, very useful for women at certain times of the month, if you see what I mean. Basically boudin noir, one portion will cover your iron needs for a whole week. So I had this boudin noir, this black pudding. Black pudding is the Scottish version. It's a little bit drier and more spicy. So I had the black pudding for lunch with the tomatoes, and with this, I lightly steamed the broccoli for 5 to 10 minutes. I like the vegetables when they're still crispy and they keep their original colour. If you overcook them, the colour goes away, and I find that the look is less appetising. So this is what I had for my lunch, but this is what I was naturally drawn to having for my lunch today. When I was thinking about what would I like to eat, that's what came to mind, because my body is now reprogrammed into looking for the foods where I'm going to find the nutriments that I actually need. And this is, again, I've spoken about this in previous videos, this is what our bodies are naturally programmed to do, to go looking for the food where we're going to find the nutriments that are missing or lacking in our bodies at that time. So this was how I organise my lunch, and this is how I organise my eating habits in a general manner as I go. If I feel the need to eat something, and generally I don't feel the need to go and eat a plate of chips, or I don't feel the need to go to a fast food restaurant, because my body is now no longer used to eating those kind of foods. So first of all, what you basically need to do is get away from the preconceived idea about what you should be eating, okay? Because like I say, unless you're an Olympic athlete, you don't actually need to eat starch. It's not really going to serve you much purpose, apart from putting on weight, or not preventing you from losing weight. Go see what vegetables you like. You know, there's so much to choose from. I'm very lucky where I live. I have a shop across the road, a grocery shop across the road, where they have all local produce. It's not organic, but it is local produce. And I like to support the local farmers, even if they aren't organic. And I feel that perhaps because there's less traveling involved, the foods are maybe conserve better the vitamins and the nutriments that are actually essential to living. But when I go to this shop, it's amazing. They've got this stacked full of all different fruits and all different vegetables that you can have, and the colours are so amazing. I mean, when I go to a fast food restaurant, and think about this the next time you go, all of the food is the same colour. You know, my food today was dark brown black with the boudin noir, with the black pudding, bright green and fluorescent red. I mean, wow, what amazing. It was like a party on a plate. It was great, and I enjoyed every single bite of what I mean, it's like I get to the point now where I enjoy so much my food, and this is a little bit embarrassing, when I enjoy so much my food, when I'm eating, I'm actually going, because it tastes so nice. And you know, food is there to be enjoyed. The colours are also there as a pleasing aspect to the eye, to make it look appetizing. So the next time you have your plate in front of you, look at it and think, does this look appetizing? And if it doesn't, ask yourself, well, what could I do to make that look more appetizing? And believe me, you're going to start getting into the naturally drawn to foods aspect of living and eating, and it's such a pleasure to be in that place, really. So yeah, preconceived ideas. Question the preconceived ideas about what we should or should not be eating. Very often, here in France, for example, bread is a big deal. Since Marie Antoinette, bread is a big deal. You know, you have to have your bread at every meal. Well, do you really? Do you really? Is it necessary? I have survived 4 years without eating bread at every meal. My blood tests, when I have them done, are excellent. Do you really need to eat bread at every meal? I'm not convinced of that. What I am convinced of is you have to eat something that's exceedingly tasty at every meal. So I hope this has been helpful, and here's to your very good health. Thank you so much. Bye bye.